Jeff Fladen, the Executive Director of NAMI Tennessee, and welcome to our Facebook Live. Today, our Facebook Live is all about peer support, and usually Gabe Howard is the host of Facebook Live. However, he's also a peer support specialist. Gabe is waving hello. So he's a peer support specialist, so I thought I would be the host today. I'm the one behind the scenes, but if you like what you've seen on other weeks on Facebook Live, you can give me the credit for that. But if you don't like it, it's Gabe Howard. But more seriously, I want to talk a little bit about peers and then introduce our guests. We have three excellent guests. I'm excited about this show because I believe a lot in peer involvement in mental health recovery. And I will share with you that I began quite a few years back, and mental health and addiction were very apart in terms of how the treatment worked. But on the addiction side, you had AA and other 12-step programs that I would consider peer run. People were helping each other with recovery. And then you had certified alcohol and drug counselors, and these were people that had that lived experience going through addiction, and they got some treatment and they began to work in treatment centers and recovery to help others. Mental health was not doing that. And then later on, I've been more aware in the last 10 years. I know it goes longer, but I've been very aware for about 10 years about mental health people that are what we call peer recovery people. In Tennessee, we say certified peer support specialists, which covers addiction or mental health, or often both. So I think it's part of treatment, and it's really important. So we've got three people that are all certified peer support specialists, although in Ohio, what do you call it in Ohio, Gabe?
Certified peer recovery supporter.
Okay, different initials, probably
name changes a lot.
Different states, different names, peer specialists. So let me tell you who we have, and then we'll get some thoughts of what this is all about. So I'll start with Gabe, because usually he's the host. How does it feel to be in the other chair, Gabe?
I mean, it feels weird. I'm never sure if I should like ask a question or help or hit a button. Also, I don't know what's coming up next. So when I'm driving and like deciding who to highlight, when I'm the host, I know who I'm going to call on next, so I can hover over their button to highlight them. Now I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for you to give me the name.
Hopefully it'll be more relaxing than that for you. But Gabe Howard has been hosting the NAMI Facebook Lives. This is probably close to 15 of them or so. And we do these every week or every other week on Mondays. And you can get the replays as well on the NAMI Tennessee Facebook, or if you sign up for the NAMI Tennessee e-news, there's a link to the past programs. And how you sign up for our e-news, you go to our webpage, namitn.org. That's namitn for Tennessee.org. Sign up for e-news. And we have all kind of mental health information, and you know who the guests are. So Gabe Howard has a book. Can I say asshole on Facebook Live? I don't know. His book is called Mental Illness is an Asshole. And he can tell you where you can get the book. But Gabe also has been our NAMI Walk manager. He speaks at a lot of conferences, blogs. You've trained. Have you actually worked as a peer support specialist directly with peers, Gabe?
I have. I did for 2.5 years at a drop-in center here in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, so you've done that work. You've had the personal experience living with bipolar, which you talk about very openly, so I can share it. And you've worked as a peer support specialist. And we also have Dina Savvenas, who is also a certified peer support specialist, but I know you're working now with the program called, I always mix up the order, but My Life, My Health, My Choice. Might have got it right, but anyhow, you also are a certified peer support specialist. So have you worked directly as a certified peer support specialist with people in recovery?
I have, and you said the name beautifully, but it's My Health, My Choice, My Life. That was close, so.
I got the right three, I just kind of mix them up.
Exactly. And that's totally fine. Yes, I have worked with peers directly. I don't now so much that I've stepped into this statewide position, but yes, I did. I worked in peer support centers, group homes, outpatient, and it was very fulfilling, very rewarding. But right now, I am a statewide peer wellness coach and trainer. So I have a team of wellness coaches that are working directly with clients and agencies across the state. We're concentrated in the East right now, but we're providing services all across the state in different ways, including telehealth now. So, yeah.
1 second. Okay. Usually it's a dog or a child. This is a grown-up who needed car keys. So this is the area that we're in today. Anyhow, thank you for being here. And I know that Dina is also the chair of the CAB, and we'll get back to the CAB. But I know it's got to do with peers and an organization in Tennessee. And then we have, it's got his name in the bottom left corner, but it left out Dr. Monty Burks. And I know that you have a lot of responsibilities with the Tennessee Department of Mental Health, and one of which is working with faith communities, and one is with the Lifeliners. But you also are a certified peer support specialist. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing too, and we'll give you more opportunities as we go, but just to set the stage.
Absolutely. So I'm the director of faith-based initiatives. I work with all different beliefs and perspectives on how to recognize and combat addiction and talk about mental health concerns that may be prevalent in their community, or maybe something they just need to have a conversation about. I also oversee Project Lifeline, which I was actually one of the original Lifeline Project peers in the beginning. We earned our certified peer recovery specialist certification in 2013. Michelle Webster and Cheryl McCoy were my two teachers back in the day. But just an awesome experience. I've always been an advocate for peers, and I still to this day think that we need a larger peer workforce across the state. I know we're going to dive into that, but I think we need more peers to be able to intersect in the gray areas where our therapists and our counselors may not be able to dive in, but the person with the holy blue jeans and the Leonard Skinner t-shirt might be able to kind of make some sense of things to get people to the right place.
Well, thank you all for being here. And I'm going to start with a question about peers. But let me just say first, peers can mean different things to different people. So in NAMI, we have classes for caregivers or family members of somebody that has a loved one with severe mental illness. So it could be a mom or a dad or a brother, sibling, and they take our class and then we train them and we say it's peer taught. And in law enforcement, you might have a law enforcement officer talking to another officer about depression. That would be a peer thing. But when we talk about peers in recovery, what are we talking about? Who's a peer? What do they do? And we're going to go reverse order because someone else taught me to do that. And so let's start with you, Monty. You started the Lifeliners. You were a Lifeliner. You supervised it. What are we talking about? What do peers do to help mental health, or is it mental health and addiction? What do they do? What's it all about?
Well, we said peers play so many pivotal roles. From the Lifeline perspective, they're change agents. They're reducing the stigma related to disease, the disease of addiction, and also the mental health issues and concerns. They're what it looks like on the other side of a program. And what I mean is they can articulate that, hey, listen, no matter what happens to you, you can utilize that lived experience to be able to explain to somebody else that there are resources that can help you. So when we talk about peers from our perspective, we're the guys out there in the community telling our story on the soapbox and say, listen, I survived my addictions. I survived the diagnosis because the diagnosis didn't define me. I was able to utilize resources that were available through the state, through national access, whatever, to be able to be something better and be able to go back out to my community. So when we talk about peers and peer advocacy and people with lived experience, we're talking about people who are out there in the trenches that can be a living example and can also provide some valuable insight from their own perspective about what they've been through and maybe be an example to someone else who is suffering from a similar circumstance.
Very good. And the challenge for me is who to ask what. So Gabe, now I can see how you feel there. But Dina, I bet you know how people become a peer and who becomes a peer. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Well, a peer is simply someone with lived experience, either a mental illness or substance use disorder that has been in recovery. And in particular, in our certified peer recovery specialist program, you have to have been in recovery for at least 2 years. And then you go through a 40-hour week-long training that's very intensive, and you can become certified after that. So we're people who have lived experience. We've been through some stuff. We've probably received services before in behavioral health, and we are overcoming. You know, it's a constant process, and we want to help others. So professionally, or just maybe in our community. So we have been there, done that, we got the t-shirt, and we want to help others find their own recovery. So it's just, you know, we're taking over. We know that in behavioral health, we are more effective oftentimes than others who can't necessarily self-disclose that they have their own lived experience, because there's just a sense of connection that happens when you are able to share that with a peer, when you're able to say, I've been there, maybe not exactly what you've gone through, but I've been through my own journey, and this is where I am now. So it's like you're embedding hope, you're setting an example, you're just, you know, lighting a fire. And we've been trained as a certified peer recovery specialist to, you know, provide peer support, for example. And I hope we're going to talk about TAPS at some point too in this meeting, because
Talk about what?
TAPS, the newly formed Tennessee Association of Peer
TAPS.
Support.
Okay, I didn't know that that's
Something really
that, but
exciting.
sure, making a
Mhm.
note to be sure and do that. So Gabe, you don't know what's coming ever from me, but you've talked openly about the treatment that you've received for mental illness. Did you ever encounter a peer in your treatment?
So I encountered a peer accidentally. The peer support wasn't really big when I was diagnosed back in 2003 in Ohio. I don't know how it was nationally, but in Ohio, there was no such thing as a certification program. There was no peer supporters. Really, the only peer support that we had were support groups. Now, the person who took me to the hospital, for all intents and purposes, she was a peer. She lived with depression. She'd experienced suicidality. So she was extraordinarily helpful because she had kind of been there, done that in no small way. And then also the support groups that I went to, it was a support group with people who had mental illness, some just like me, bipolar disorder, others anxiety or depression or schizophrenia. And I didn't know it at the time, but of course that's what peer support was. So I think I saw the beginning stages of peer support in the state of Ohio.
Very good. And you've heard me talk about, I'm going to give a shout out to an early pioneer. If anybody is listening from Ohio, might remember Ellen Deacon.
Yes.
Who
Yes.
was doing this in the 1980s. I happen to know her, and I'm dating myself. So I'm from Ohio initially, and I don't know where peer stuff got started really. The consumer movement, peer movement, any of those things. Does anybody know? I don't.
I'm not aware. I've heard
Well, we're
like
glad
little
it's
bits
here.
of history.
We'll do that. I'm going to mix up the order here because we went up and back down. So we'll start with Dina kind of in the middle. Do you have any idea, or could you give an overview from your work on the cab or with my health and all those things? Where do peers work in Tennessee? What kind of settings that you're aware of? I know you mentioned peer centers already. That's one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, in behavioral health, typically peer support centers, outpatient group homes, with my experience, now I know like the lifeliners and navigators, they work in different places like ERs, and I'm not sure we're all, but my team is employed in behavioral health agencies. So we go into the peer support centers and provide coaching, education, support. We go to the group homes, outpatient centers. That's where we are, but that is not exclusively, just where peers are. There's hospitals. We're everywhere.
I know one new area is with the pre-arrest diversion drop-off centers where law enforcement can drop somebody off in crisis, that they're having peers now. But can you tell more about a peer center? And I don't know if every states have these. Gabe, if I can get a short answer, because I asked Dina, do you have peer centers in Ohio?
Yeah. In the big cities we do, yes.
Well, I'd like to hear about yours too, because there's people in other communities. But Dina, you worked in a peer center some, I think you said. What's a peer center about?
Well, there are 45 peer centers across the state of Tennessee, and what happens there is it's a place where peers can get education. Maybe they want to go to work. Maybe they want to learn about being a good self-manager. Maybe they want to talk about wellness. So there's always a variety of educational opportunities going on. They also go on outings. They, have a lot of fun. They just support each other. They love each other a lot. Sometimes they get a healthy snack. It's just a positive environment for peers to come together on regular days throughout the week, spend some time, support each other, learn, and grow. And hopefully it all supports them in their own recovery and just, helps them just be better people.
Okay. And as I understand it, the peer centers are free and they're supported by the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services in Tennessee. And there's a website called recoverywithinreach.org, recoverywithinreach.org, that would have a list, or you could probably just Google peer center and your state and you'll probably find them. And the people that go there, they're all in treatment for mental health or addiction, typically, or have been in treatment. Would that be true?
Mm-hmm. That's true. Many of them, in my experience, also live in group homes. And so they have transportation, which can be a big barrier for persons receiving services. So they have coordinators in each center that go pick them up and bring them to the center and take them back home, if they need that. So that's a really huge component to it as well. Some people, they don't drive, or they wouldn't have access otherwise to any services without that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then Mr. Leonard, if I forget his name, it says it right on the shirt. It's Mr. Leonard Burks. Your group is not working in a peer center. They work out in the community.
That is correct.
So how do people find them? Or if you might just be introduced if you show up where there's one, I guess, like an ER, but maybe you'd like to find one. Like
Absolutely.
I'm dealing with PTSD, anxiety, depression. I'm just uncomfortable. People don't get it. And I already have a doc and meds, but I want someone that I could just talk to. Do your folks do that?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a few different ways that you can connect with the Lifeline Peer Project. One is you can go to tn.gov /behavioral health for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And you can go to Office of Faith-Based Initiatives, and you will see a link there's a map and a link to all of the Lifeliners. It'll have their email address and their phone number. They are peers who provide peer support. Also, our 3 faith-based coordinators, information is on there. We actually have 17 Lifeliners now instead of the 10 that started, and we have 3 faith-based coordinators. Again, you can get their information there. You can also get it from the anti-drug coalitions, the associations, and the groups that they have. Each one of our Lifeliners is housed in an anti-drug coalition across the state. Anti-drug meaning substance abuse prevention. I really try to stay away from the word anti-drug, but sometimes people only recognize that terminology when you talk about substance abuse prevention. But our prevention coalitions house our faith-based coordinators and our lifeliners. Our navigators are housed in treatment agencies that work as with partnerships with the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And we also have peers that work in our recovery courts around the state. So each one of those different programs incorporate a peer-led piece of their workforce and part of their treatment teams, their recovery teams, their outreach teams. And there are a few more that I can name, but I want to say something to Dina and she talked about you guys talked about the peer support centers. I try to visit peer support centers when I travel across the state. It is one of the most cool experiences to meet so many people that are just organically bonding with each other for community. And I think if anybody can hear this right now, if you get just a second, stop in a peer support agency and say hello to somebody. There are a lot of people there that could use you coming in and being part of the community that they're in. They're not a separate community than we are. They're one that is right in front of you. Just sometimes we don't know they exist. So that can be part of our personal growth, is to be connected to that peer community. And that's good for us and it's good for them.
Well, NAMI being a grassroots organization built on volunteers, I appreciate you saying that. And I know sometimes we have various NAMI affiliates will have a holiday party with the local peer center in the summer, a picnic, or around Christmas time, and I've gotten a few pounds from those events. Yeah, because there's all kind of food there and stuff I try not to eat, like potato chips and cookies and things like that. But there's healthy food too. Hopefully, if Dina is taking care of the menu, she'll be sure there's healthy snacks. But those are nice events. So visit your peer center. I think that's good. And to make it easy, if you don't have a pen and paper handy, you can always email me. And you can, if you know my name, you can email it. But I also monitor info@namitn.org. So that's easy to remember. info@namitn.org. And I can give you a link to the lifeliners that Monty talked about and how to find them. And I got a question here about funding. So I know the state of Tennessee offers the training and the certification, and funding would depend on where certified peer support specialists work. Now, some may volunteer. So I know the VA hires them, so they're going to be paid by the VA. The peer centers that's state money that's appropriated by the legislature to the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, I would assume. Is that right, Monty?
Yes.
And maybe there's federal money. Gabe, you may know about this. Does federal, I hate to get too much into the weeds of advocacy and how the system works, but there's a thing called federal block grant money. Does that from SAMHSA? Does that pay for peer support specialists? Gabe, do you know?
It can. There's so much. It does vary from state to state, and then even in like my state, Ohio, it can vary from city to city. It's a little bit complicated. It really depends on how. I suppose the cleanest answer would be 9 times out of 10 the government pays for it. What section of the government is really kind of a toss-up depending on what your community and state decides to do. And then of course there's also fundraisers, and I've seen really incredible peer centers run out of church basements. And those are funded largely by community donations, volunteer efforts, and fundraisers. But the largest portion, of course, is government money.
Let's talk about the certification now, because anybody can say they're a peer, but everybody can't say I'm a certified peer recovery specialist or what it may be in their community. So Dina, I know you're involved with some of those kind of things through the CAB. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. As I mentioned a little bit ago, it's a week-long training. Typically, we've gone to Zoom. Now we've gone virtual. So they spread that out over 2 weeks as of right now, half days. but it's a very intensive. There's a lot that's covered in the class. So you go through the class, 40 hours, there's 2 trainers, 2 facilitators, and then once you successfully complete that, you have to fulfill a certain number of hours within a year, either volunteer work or paid employment, to become fully certified. And then you have to complete 10 continuing education units per year. So many of them have to be in person typically, and others can be virtual, like webinars and things. So it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's doable if you want to do it. Again, you have to have been in recovery for 2 years at least to apply. And anyone that's interested in applying for that would reach out to Michelle Webster, and she can be emailed at michelle.webster@tn.gov. So she is over that program, and she can answer any questions. It's a very fulfilling week. I'm one of the trainers as well, and almost everyone that goes through it says it's been life-changing. So it's a really good program. It's not easy, but it's doable, and it's totally worth it.
Well, one of the things I like about this is if I have an illness, I'm a participant in my recovery as opposed to just other people doing things to me or for me. And I can maybe help other people too and share what I've learned. It's very exciting. I think with mental illness, a lot of times people get alienated and isolated. A lot of people with mental illness are not working, and that can be harder to feel good about yourself. Our society's like, I'm supposed to be working. Well, I can use my recovery to help other people. So Gabe, I know you've been involved with training as well. You've been a trainer. How's this different than being a therapist? Because 40 hours and some work time is not the same as, a master's degree, but so the service is different. It's not psychotherapy. So can you contrast a little bit how this is, what it is and why it's not psychotherapy?
Yeah, so therapy is its own thing, right? It's medical in nature. You're not allowed to give like straight up advice. Therapists aren't really sharing their own personal stories. The camaraderie is in therapy, it's inappropriate. If I went to a therapist and I said I'm feeling depressed, and the therapist said I too suffer from depression, I I I think I just get up and leave. I mean, why are you talking about yourself? I don't understand what's happening here. Also, let's look at how therapy exists. It's a 50-minute hour in an office where you're sitting there. Peer support is wild, and I mean that in like the best way possible, right? It's peer support is over a game of cards. Peer support is in evenings and weekends. It's in groups. It's one-on-one. It's having a cup of coffee. It's in the moment. It's in hospital waiting rooms. It's everywhere. And I'm not saying that therapy can't move outside of the office. Please don't send me mean letters, but it's not its goal. Therapy is very, very different than peer support, and they both have their place. One is not better than the other. It fascinates me when like they debate which one's more important. It's like debating what's more important, electricity or plumbing. Look, if the house doesn't have both, I don't want the house. And I think that we need to start looking at peer support in that way. Peer support is a way to connect with people who have been where you are. I always use the analogy is it's much easier to do something when you've seen somebody else do it first. Being the first one to cliff dive, that person was brave. But being the second person to cliff dive, you saw the first person do it. You saw what mistakes they made. You improved upon it. It was easier. That's what peer support is. It lets you see that other people have been where you're going. That, in my mind, and for me personally, built hope and confidence. It was empowering, and not for nothing. I could get like hints and tips like, hey, how'd you do that? And we have a wealth of knowledge to share, from how to book appointments to where to go to where the local peer centers are. I mean, we talked about that earlier. nobody knows these exist because they all have advertising money. So when I was first diagnosed, I didn't even know where the support groups are until other peers started telling me, oh, Gabe, there's a support group for young men. Oh, well, okay, that sounds good. There's a peer group over there for people who are farther along. That's powerful. And I can't say enough good. We have peer support in every other, there are mommy bloggers and mom groups and new parent groups and grief counseling, and nobody bats an eye. But the minute you say peer support and mental illness, people are like, I don't know. Why do we have that? Come on.
Well, I do want to hear more about that because, as I mentioned at the beginning, in the addiction world, this got adopted more easily. I think with 12-step, which began in Ohio in 1933, I know my history there with two guys got together to stay sober. So what have you seen? I don't know who wants to answer this, but the traditional agencies, the psych hospitals, the community mental health center, outside of the peer center where they've got the docs and the case managers, have they embraced this and welcomed it? Or is there like distrust, like, well, why would I want to hire somebody with mental illness? They're going to have an episode and they're not going to be a good employee, or they're not going to have appropriate boundaries, or is there pushback, or has this been accepted? What have you all seen? Whoever wants to go first, you just try it out there.
Y'all want to tackle this? let me say something, and I think I'm going to come back in after Gabe and Dina. You've got three panelists that can hit this thing from three different ways. I think that there has been a little pushback because of stigma. Sometimes certain communities, certain professional communities don't really understand the significance of the peer community. Gabe hit it right on the head. You know, you have baking clubs that are peers that teach other people how to bake. They don't understand that is peer-led discussions and teaching, you know, that they're sharing knowledge as peers.
Kind of like mentoring, right?
Yeah, the mentoring, you know, and so, you know, we as professionals, we're part of this evolving, changing process of saying, okay, this is what peers are. We can help people understand that there is a therapist. We're not trying to take the therapist's place. We're simply saying that this is what I did in my situation. You know, we could tell somebody about local therapists available, local counselors in their communities, but we're just kind of in the trenches telling the story, being the brave one to say, yeah, I jumped off a cliff and landed on my forehead. Maybe you should go down a little bit because there's rocks at the bottom. That's not actually water at the bottom. But you know,
you and Gabe need to hang out together more.
right. But you know, I think that the majority of the pushback, I've seen it both ways. I've seen that professional agencies say, I'm not really ready. They can volunteer, but we're not going to pay them. Okay, that becomes a problem to me, because if you're going to utilize somebody's lived experience, listen, you don't have to have a PhD, a DD, a BA, or anything to have a wealth of lived experience that can surpass somebody in another professional field. You can't tell me a person that's got 20 years in the big book doesn't know more than someone who has got a PhD and has had no addiction training. That's not going to correlate. And I mean this with all due respect. I do not want hate mail. You can send it to Jeff Fladen. He can get the hate mail. I'll let him
info at NAMI-TN.
Yeah, he can get it. But you know, there's got to be a comfortable partnership between the two. So the people on the ground end, we understand the significance of the therapist, the counselor, the teacher, the preacher, the person in that role. We need them to understand what we do as peers and understand our importance. Everybody doesn't need to go to a therapist. Some people just need a coach. They just
Monty,
need a coach.
how's your staff? How does your staff feel that they've been respected by licensed people?
It's an empowering moment when they know that licensed people reach out to peers to work and help the same person. It's an empowering moment for a peer. I'll be honest with you. A lot of the people that have worked with me with Project Lifeline have actually went on to get degrees. They've actually reached out to the therapist and the counselor and the clinician because they see that, oh, wow, maybe we're not that much different. Maybe this is a pathway for me to take because we do work together. And maybe some of the stuff that I do is similar to what they do. So the empowering moment of communities that for some reason somebody said that they're opposed or they're different, the adversarial roles, this is not that way. It's two different people working on different parts of the same person. You know, it's like he said it earlier. Gabe hit it on the head. Electricity or plumbing. Now I want the whole house. I want the whole house to work. So however we've got to get there. Every one of our lifeliners and faith-based coordinators have lived experience. It's mandatory. You know, we want people with lived experience to have certified peer recovery specialist training, because we want them to be able to articulate. Listen to this, Jeff. This is cool, cool thinking right here. We'd like to be able to articulate to the doctor, as well as to the person that just got out of jail, all of the available programs and meetings in the area.
And that people can get better, that there's recovery, right?
Yep, because sometimes
hope.
Yep, hope. Some people don't, a doctor is not tasked with knowing how many 12-step meetings are in the geographic area. He may want to know, but where does that fall into his professional acumen? A peer looks at recovery capital. That's the recovery meetings, ministries, where some toiletries are, where t-shirts, where deodorant is. We're going to know where all of that is. So when a person transitions out of a community, either coming from the top down or from the bottom up, we want to make sure they know where the recovery capital is, so they can stay in recovery, so they can stay in transition, stay resilient. So that's my piece on it. I'm going to pass it over to my counterparts. But that's, you know, reducing stigma, I think, is part of our role, is we have to tackle the knuckleheadness of the hierarchy to let them know that, hey, listen, the peers, first of all, peers have been in your workforce since day one. You just didn't know they were there. Now we're telling you that we're peers. Now we're telling you we're in recovery because we're not ashamed of it.
Dina, what have you seen in your encounters? Are employers open? Is there pushback?
You know, it's like Monty said, there's a mix. It just depends. Like Cherokee Health Systems, for example, one of my peer wellness coaches there sits in with the treatment team, you know, with the doctors and the therapists and the case managers and everyone else. And she is considered a vital part of the team with something unique to offer, you know, as a wellness coach. So other agencies, you know, it's different. I mean, there's so much stigma still. I mean, we're pioneering this whole thing, and it hasn't been around that long, and it's growing, and people are starting to hire more and more. I see more job announcements more and more than ever, and for peers. So it's growing, but there's still a lot of stigma. I mean, we don't make as much money in the peer world as non-peers. So that's one thing to consider as well. I mean, there's still a lot of stigma, but it just depends. And we're growing, and we are, maybe they're pushing back, but we're pushing back too, you know, and we're leading by example. And one thing to remember that's important is, yes, we have lived experience, but we are in recovery. So we tackled it, we manage it, not to say that we're not going to have relapses or problems like everyone else has, but we've got this thing. So, and we've been trained and we're educated, and we're no different than anyone else. Like Monty said, we've been around all this time. It's just now that we're able to say it. So it just depends, but it's getting better.
And Gabe, you are leading the charge for peers having a role in recovery. Do you get pushback? Like, do you have a master's, and are you a psychologist, or what have you encountered?
I get a ton of pushback.
Oh, you wrote a book, for God's sake.
I didn't write a book on getting pushback. That'll be the next book. Getting pushback is an asshole. Here's the thing, though. On one hand, some of the pushback is appropriate. If I come forward and say, hello, my name is Gabe Howard, and I have expert information in something, I don't mind somebody questioning whether or not that expertise is valid or real, or trying to figure out like what my bona fides are or why I'm qualified. In fact, I think the world would be a much better place if people stopped getting their mental health information and their mental illness cures from memes on the internet.
Yeah.
If one more person tells me that aromatherapy will cure bipolar disorder, and that's why they fired all of their doctors, and then bad stuff happens, and I'm like, what happened? Like, well, they stopped taking their meds. Why? Well, because they saw this meme or YouTube video. So in that way, I think it's good. The problem is sometimes people ask and they're not willing to accept any answer. When I tell them what my expertise is in, what my role is, and where I can help, they've already made up their mind. This is where I feel that our advocacy needs to work. lived experience is not pointless. Peer support is not pointless. And again, it's in every other organization and agency. Could you imagine if somebody said that a cancer survivor support group was pointless? People would be up in arms. I mean, could you imagine if somebody said that a grief survivor after the death of your spouse was pointless? People would flip out. But you say, hey, mentally ill people getting together, peers, and helping each other out, and people are like, I don't know, that sounds sketchy. There is what we have to get on. And yes, unfortunately, sometimes people just cannot get out of their own way on that one. And as Dina said, we have to be the professionals. We have to model the way. We have to show them the value. And more we are getting there. But it does kind of stink that we have to prove something that frankly has just been around probably all of our entire lives.
Dina, you were oh, Monty, were you like, you had something that needs to come
Oh no,
out?
I was just agreeing with Gabe. He just, I just agree with Gabe, man.
We got a blue ribbon panel here, so that's what we
for
like.
sure. People look for confirmation bias. They
Yes.
they ask a question and they already know what they want as an answer. Well, they already look at some people a certain way. They just want somebody to back that up, and then they'll eventually find somebody so they can say, "Gotcha, told you so." Dr. Mean, and just that's another conversation for another NAMI panel that when you have us together. But I'm excited to be on that one as well.
Well, we'll keep that in mind, and we're going to go to taps in a minute, Dina. But before we do that, one of the biggest controversies I find around mental illness is the issue of meds. And NAMI used to be criticized as being in the pocket of the drug companies and just pro med. I'll speak as the director of NAMI, and what I'm about is learn about your illness, whatever it is, any kind of illness, learn about it, learn about different treatment approaches, and determine what you think is best for you. There's possible pluses and minuses for lots of treatments, but are you allowed to talk about meds? Are you allowed to share when you talk about the rules, certification? Here's the med I took, because in NAMI, we try to discourage that. What med worked for me might not work for you, and someone else that can do a lot of exercise and self-talk and bibliotherapy and maybe will work. So what about med discussion or specific treatment discussion? How do you handle that? Dina's going, no. You want to start?
We don't share
You're all going, no.
medication, treatment. It's just not safe to do that. So
how do you handle it? Like, the doc wants me to take these meds. I'm worried I won't be able to have sex, or it's going to make me fat or get diabetes. I mean, can you talk about it at all?
Yeah, well, definitely. It depends on the setting. We don't talk about it like in the certified peer recovery specialist training. We don't talk about it inside workshops or other educational groups we provide. But in one-on-one coaching, if someone wanted to talk about that, then we would use motivational interviewing to help them figure out what it is they really think, believe, want to do, and if they want to make a change towards that. We also, in our educational curriculums, provide information on how to better communicate with your healthcare providers, so that if you have issues with your medications, you can properly and effectively communicate that to them. So, because like you said earlier, sometimes people just get used to, having people do things to them, and they just do whatever they're told to do and never really think that they can question it. So we definitely empower them that in a way that if they do have questions and concerns about, say, their medication, that we can provide tools to empower them to help them communicate that with their healthcare providers. But we would never encourage them to do one thing or another. We just help them figure out exactly what it is they want to do, and help them communicate that.
Monty, is that your experience as well around the meds?
That's my experience as well. That's not a, we just a rule of thumb, we all hear a different tune. We all hear a different song. You have to be overly cautious and sensitive to your own words, because sometimes, misarticulation can cause a lot of damage to people. So you want to make sure you're very cautious and have the right setting for the right conversations. And again, Dina hit it on the head, motivational interviewing. As a peer, we are tasked with being as professional as we can because we know the ripple effect if we're not. And so I would implore, if this conversation comes with other peers, to reach out to recoverywithinreach.org. We actually have trainings from I think Magellan has trainings on how to handle those types of situations. So that's my piece on it, but absolutely not. That's not something that we want to discuss or even give someone the idea that we swayed them either way. That's not what we're trying to do.
Everything that both Dina and Monty said, of course, is 100% true. The only thing that I have to add on it is sometimes people come to me and they say things like, I don't want to take medication. And again, motivational interviewing, and I'll say why, and they'll tell me why. And that thing might be based on literal BS. It might be Dr. Meme. They're like, well, I was prescribed a medicine that will make me lose my hair. Well, okay, let me show you the pamphlet that came with your meds, or let's pull it up on, WebMD or the website and look and see if that is genuinely a concern. Let me help you read the patient insert. Let me help you. Did you discuss this with your doctor? No, I was afraid to ask questions. I got to do what the doctor says. Let me empower you to have a discussion with your doctor about the fears of this medication. So we're talking about the medication adjacent, right? In general, when somebody says, I don't want to do something, it's usually not the something that they have a problem with. It's a result of the something. And you can help them understand. I am shocked at the number of people that don't understand that they can ask their doctors questions. They believe that the doctor asks them questions, they answer them, and then they have to do what they're told. And when I say, no, you don't have to take a medication unless you want to. And if you don't understand why you're taking it, that maybe you shouldn't, make the sign of the customer, be a healthcare consumer, be empowered. And then we start talking about that. Self-advocacy is a real big thing that I help teach a lot of peers. And it usually comes up because of some treatment that they don't fully understand and are terrified of.
I got a little tip here too, because my primary care doctor, he gives me notes from the session. So I hope that a prescriber, nurse practitioner, psychiatrist would give information sheets about the medicine and how to take it and side effects to watch for. People can ask for that. We're moving toward the end. Before I ask all of you for last thoughts and give a NAMI commercial, Dina, you wanted to talk about TAPS.
Sure, I'll just do that really briefly. So TAPS is still in formation, but I'm one of the board members and really proud to be helping out with that. It stands for Tennessee Association of Peer Specialists, and our mission is to just advocate for the profession, help peers with their certification, to connect them with the resources they need to get their volunteer hours or maybe job notifications. We're going to be launching a website soon, and we're going to be making the announcement at the Certified Peer Recovery Specialist Conference, which is October 8th and 9th. 9th is the official day. The 8th is like an awards ceremony, dinner thing, virtual in the evening. So if you attend that, you'll get all the details, but I'm sure we'll be blasting it out otherwise. But basically, we are an association that's forming for members that want to join and help promote the profession, advocate for the profession.
You need to be a certified peer support specialist to join?
Or on your way or interested. So, because otherwise there's not really a lot for us to help you with. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to be certified to join, but ideally,
in process,
at least on your way. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to give you all a chance to just share some last thoughts about talking with a peer, becoming a peer, whatever you'd like to share. And thank you all for being here. Before I do that, I do want to mention NAMI Tennessee also has a convention the 24th and 25th of September. It'll be broadcast over Zoom. There'll be no charge for that. We've got some national and local speakers. So just watch our Facebook or webpage or sign up for the e-news. at namition.org, and you'll be informed all about that. There'll be a lot of great stuff. And let's see, I'm trying to think who wants the last word. I bet Gabe would like the last word. So Monty, why don't you give us the first word?
I'll give you a quick word. I'm a peer. I've been a peer. I would like to encourage people that are on the fence about going through the process, please engage. The ripple effect of you becoming a peer is generational for you and your family, and your community. You know, if for nothing else, become a peer, go back to your community and understand the resources, become the culturally competent person to deliver the right message so we can quit memeing people. We can quit memeing people all over the place. You know, I want to say this, you know, we live in a time where a lot of people access social media for information. And I know sometimes you can get something positive out of that, and sometimes you can't get something positive out of that. But I want people to be overly cautious and careful and go through the peer recovery specialist training and be the advocate in your community for change. And that's all I've got, man. I'm very thankful to be with Dina and Gabe, and I hope to be able to participate with them again. And, you know, Jeff, I love you dearly, my friend. You owe me biscuits, brother.
Yeah, I met, I don't use this term anymore, but I met with Monty at what I used to call the home of our future sponsor, the Loveless Cafe, which is famous for biscuits. But we're not doing the radio show these days, so I've not been at the Loveless Cafe during these challenging times. But they're still open, and they have social distancing picnic tables. So if you're in or around Nashville, get yourself some. They've got nice omelets and biscuits and chicken and all that. Dina, what other thoughts would you like to leave people with on this topic about peers and peer recovery?
Oh, just know that you're not alone. Know that there's someone out there that you can reach out to, and just, you know, do it. Just reach out. And if you want more information, feel free to contact me. And it's just been
How do
great
they find you?
You can email me at csavvenas@tamho.org. That's CSAVVENAS @tamho, TAMHO.org. So feel free to reach out. I'm very passionate about this work. I'm very proud to be here. I love being a hope dealer, not a hope stealer. And it's just awesome being here with you all today. Thank you so much for having me. Be well, everyone, and keep fighting the good fight.
Before Gabe goes,
well, thank you.
Monty.Burks at tn.gov. I apologize. I didn't give my contact information, Gabe. I'm sorry, y'all. Monty.Burks at tn.gov. I work for these guys. I work with these guys. Please contact me at any time.
Okay, and Gabe, you've had a couple of minutes to think about something really good that you want to leave people with. Here's your shot.
I am a really firm believer that we need as many tools as humanly possible to do anything. Who says that they are too good of a driver? You can always be a better driver. Or maybe a better example is who says they have too much money? You can always have more money. Who says, oh, I went on 3 vacations last year. I don't need a 4th vacation. Peer support is just another tool in the toolbox to use as you feel it's appropriate. Sometimes you may use it a lot. Sometimes you might not use it at all. Certainly since 2003, when I was diagnosed, peer support has played different roles in my life. When I was first diagnosed, I had so many questions and I just needed hope. So I asked a lot of questions, and throughout the years, I got a lot of hope. And then there was a period of time where I really didn't use peer support at all. I didn't go because I didn't need it. And then there was a period of time where I became a volunteer and I became a facilitator and a certified peer specialist and started doing work on the other side. And like Monty said, that had an incredible amount of value to both remind me of how far I came and gave me the opportunity to give back, because that's what keeps the whole thing moving along. You need people in all walks of life in peer support. You can't have just people with questions or there's nobody to answer them. And you can't have people with just answers or, well, we're all talking to ourselves in an echo chamber. Peer support will persevere because it's persevered in everything else. It's permeated our society. Not one of us that had a question about something would call somebody who we didn't think knew the answer. I still call my grandfather, the man is 90 years old, when something breaks in my house, because in my mind, he's the expert homeowner. That's all peer support is. And someday the people younger than me when I'm 90 will call me and will waste a quarter because I don't know anything about home repair. This is what we need. We need hope. We need tools. And it's striking to me that anybody would say to somebody, hey, is that your toolbox? Yeah, throw away that tool. You don't need it. Just because the tool isn't for you doesn't mean it's not for somebody else. And that's the message that I want to move forward. Nobody is saying to replace peer support with anything. We're simply saying add peer support to your toolbox and use it as you personally feel appropriate. That's the entire message.
Thank you all for being here, and everybody that's viewed, thank you for viewing. If you're interested in this topic, let us know and share the information with other people. They can watch it on Facebook. And next Monday, we're not doing a live show. We hope you enjoy the holiday. The days for me kind of run together these days since I'm working from home anyhow, but it is a holiday. There'll be maybe good TV shows. I don't know what. If you picnic, do it social distancing, and bye all.